This episode of New Politics was released on the 2nd of May, 2026, and produced on the lands of the Wangal and Gadigal people.
If nothing can be trusted in American politics, how do people respond when a real crisis occurs? And when every event is weaponised, doesn't matter if it's real or not. For Donald Trump, in a system that's built on permanent chaos, the truth just doesn't disappear, it just doesn't mean anything anymore. I'm Eddie Djokovic.
I'm David Lewis. All of this is coming up in this big episode of New Politics.
And if you're listening in and haven't subscribed to our website at New Politics, you're missing out on half of what we do. There's regular articles and analysis of this strange world of politics. It's all free, and you can subscribe at newpolitics.com.au. And of course, if you do want to support us, it's just $5 per month at Patreon and Substack, and all of this is a good way to support independent journalism.
Why do you think this keeps happening to you?
Well, I've studied assassinations, and I must tell you, the most impactful people, the people that do the most, you take a look at the people, Abraham Lincoln, you go through the people that have gone through this, where they got them, but the people that do the most, the people that make the biggest impact, they're the ones that they go after. They don't go after the ones that don't do much because they like it that way. And when you look at the people that have either, whether it was an attempt or a successful attempt, they're very impactful people. Just take a look at the names there, the big names. And I hate to say I'm honored by that, but I've done a lot. We've done a lot. We've taken this country, and we were a laughingstock for years, and now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We've changed this country, and there are a lot of people that are not happy about that.
The latest incident surrounding Donald Trump, and this has been framed as an assassination attempt, well, it's occurred in a political environment where truth itself has been totally degraded. And there's been a divided reaction where half of the world believes that the event was staged. And this isn't just because of the flimsy evidence and the way that it's all been distorted, but because of the years and years that Donald Trump has spent telling everyone about the fake news, actually creating the fake news, and also creating an environment where no one really knows what the truth is anymore. And I think this is the logical endpoint of a political strategy that's been built on permanent distrust, where a leader keeps blurring the lines between truth and fiction. Nothing is believed, even when it might actually be real. And ultimately, whether this assassination attempt was real or not, well, it doesn't really matter, because everything in Trump land is weaponized. Whether it's information or disinformation, everything is weaponized. Everything ends up being a political contest where most of the public just isn't sure what to make of any of it. And that's probably the intended consequence anyway.
It was odd. I'm not sure what to think, really. On one level, I can see why people might think that it was staged. How did the shooter get through security? But he said that the security was incompetent. That tracks. On another level, why isn't the shooter dead? If he'd shot at the President of the United States, and that's true if it was Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, they'd have shot him. Although I'm thinking of Ronald Reagan, where they wrestled him to the ground and got Reagan to the hospital. But given that it's Trump, who's a much less subtle thinker than even Ronald Reagan and his people, and given what happened to the shooter in where his ear was or wasn't hit. They shot him before they had any chance at all to work out what he was doing there. This current guy, they leave alive. So I don't know that it's an absolute definite that it was a setup. Trump's calmness after suggested one thing. Having said that, Erica Kirk, clearly traumatized and just wanting to go home, rang true. I'm no fan of Erica Kirk, but let's be fair. There's so much suggesting that it might have been a conspiracy or it might have been an opportunity that they've grabbed. The fact that the first thing pretty much Trump mentions is not, this is what happened, the
He
security.
went straight to the ballroom.
Yeah, he went straight to the ballroom. If this had happened in the ballroom, this wouldn't have happened. Not quite sure it is. They've held the correspondence dinner there for many years. And
He's never been to any of these correspondence events before.
And that was odd too. Why suddenly? But of course, they didn't have comics there. Some of the funniest American stand-up has come out of this stuff. And Obama, for example, willingly joining in on one of the sketches where Peel used to do Angry Obama, where he'd pretend to be what Obama's thinking while he's calm and dignified, and inside and eventually Obama snaps and storms out of the room, which is very funny. If you can trace it up, have a look at it. So that Trump would go to something that might run the risk of him being ridiculed, which every single American president has had to put up with. And Kennedy said something along the lines of, we hate it, but democracy is better for it. So keep pouring it on us, but yeah, we hate it.
Yeah, but to be honest, Dave, like whether this happened or not, whether it was a conspiracy, to me, I don't really care. It doesn't really matter because it's going to be used in whichever way they need to use it. And I think what we've seen over the past week and what we've seen for the past 15 months now, and then the previous 4 years when he was first in office, I just think it's that very familiar pattern of Donald Trump in office. And that's the situation of a crisis presenting itself as an opportunity. And there's always a crisis within this Trump regime. Every single day, every single minute, there's something, there's chaos, there's a problem. And then there's that immediate political response to it. It's almost like they've just got it up the sleeve, ready to bring out. So they blame the left, blame the Democrats for all of this, and then use the crisis to justify something bigger, which is exactly what happened. This incident has been used as a reason to justify the $400 million ballroom project, even though this incident occurred 3,000 kilometres away from the White House. And ballroom itself, that actually sounds innocuous, but it's going to be one of the biggest spying and security outfits ever produced by the United States. It's going to be sitting in the White House with this ballroom above it. And it's not a case where the United States has been this altruistic state before the Trump regimes commenced. The United States has always behaved in this sort of way, but under Donald Trump, it's just been a lot more open about it, doesn't care too much about hiding its behaviour. And this is exactly what's been happening in Iran. It's unclear what the United States is trying to do there, except for control and steal Iran's resources. But it's really chaotic, and then every opportunity is used to attack all of Trump's opponents, and it's almost like presenting himself as the victim. But I think that ultimately this sort of process of chaos every day, chaos every minute, it ends up producing voter fatigue. If every day is like this, if it's a permanent state of crisis, which is exactly what it was during Trump's first term in office, and this second term has actually been even worse, well, I think there's a breaking point that exists within the electorate, within voterland, and that will arrive at some point soon. And it might end up happening in the midterm elections that are coming up soon in the United States.
The figures are suggesting a Republican wipeout. The figures suggested too Trump wipeout with Kamala Harris.
Well, these are polls, I guess. We just have to wait until the vote on the day to see if it comes to fruition or not.
Yeah. I would find it hard to believe. I found it hard to believe with Harris, given the figures, given anomalies, given that Elon Musk and Donald Trump both essentially admitted that they were able to fix the election. And for those who say, but the courts were using doctored data, the courts got data after all the tests, and the tests were not before. They weren't getting raw data, they were getting fixed data. And it's likely, which is why the Republicans are panicking. And of course, the way the Republicans have always dealt with low polls is to use conflict and war. Bush goes to Iraq, becomes the highest rating president post-war, more than Truman, more than Nixon, more than Kennedy, more than Clinton.
But at least George W. Bush built a case for that war, albeit all the flaws that exist with the Iraq war, at least he spent the time and effort to build the case for war, whereas Donald Trump doesn't do that. He just goes and does the war.
Goes in and, Venezuela, which got them possibly control of low-quality oil. Some military strategists are saying the United States has lost the war in Iran already. I'm less inclined to think that because God knows what's true anymore. I don't doubt the analysts, but God knows what data you're working on.
But also, I think within these polls, whichever polls are being produced at the moment, it's just hard to believe that the American public would go to the next midterms, and that's coming up in November. They go to the midterms and say, oh, look, I love this chaos. We've had 2 years of it. Now, they're not voting for Donald Trump, or they're not voting him in or out. He remains as president for the next 2 years. But I just can't imagine them saying, look, we'll provide Donald Trump with the same level of power that he's had for the past 2 years because we just love this chaos and we want to have more of it. I just can't imagine that happening.
High petrol prices, I love them. High electrical prices. Oh, look at how much groceries have gone up. This must mean we're doing well. Our wages have been cut. Hooray, business wins. It's insane. And it's highly unlikely that Trump can do very well from this. I suppose the best they can hope for is that they maintain the position they have now. That was precarious anyway. And yeah, I think he's going to spend the last 2 years of his terms, and talks of a third term are impossible unless he is able to change the Constitution. Now, he's ignored the Constitution before, but this one's a big one. So yeah, unless he can change the Constitution, he'll spend the last 2 years as a lame duck president, not the last 6 months. It will be interesting to see. I'd like to go forward 50 years to see what historians in 50 years would think.
It's probably not going to be a very favourable historical assessment. Well, it's not a very favourable assessment at the moment because all of this instability and the mayhem in the United States, it's not just contained within the United States, it's affecting most of the world and it's affecting all of the US allies as well. And during the week, King Charles visited the White House, and he's not going to do this sort of thing just to pop in and have a cup of tea and scones or anything like that. This was pretty much to go through all the problems that the US is causing at the moment. It's causing a lot of problems within Europe, with NATO threatening to withdraw from that, either partially or completely. And King Charles would have had that discussion with Donald Trump, I'd say. And King Charles is also the King of Australia. He is our King, David. We have to remember that. And they would have talked about the...
I'm welling up here.
Yes. And I'll just put the national anthem on for you. But
God save the King, of course.
Of course. And they would have talked about AUKUS as well. And that's starting to fall apart, where the British Parliamentary Defence Committee, well, they've raised serious questions about whether AUKUS will be delivered. And thank goodness someone is starting to finally agree with us, David, because we've been talking about this for the past 5 years. Those submarines are never going to be delivered. And what the British Defence Committee is talking about, well, they've been talking about delays, the underinvestment within AUKUS, even though Australia's already sent over $2 million or $2.5 billion. And we've always maintained that AUKUS is an incredibly bad deal for Australia, and I think it is. So King Charles would have been discussing AUKUS with Donald Trump, but this is how Trump's behaviour overall and the behaviour of his regime, well, it's causing problems for all of his allies and making the world more unstable, including the United States. Now, this assassination attempt, if it was actually an assassination attempt, well, that just continues with all the chaos. And as Malcolm McLaren said, well, there is cash from chaos. But once the chaos becomes a normal part of the behaviour of government, it's normalised, well, that ends up being a disaster for everyone.
Yeah, Rothschild apparently said the time to buy is when blood is running in the street. But if the blood continues to run, there's no one to buy. There's no one to sell to. There's no one to... So these things are only ever short-term gains. For long-term profits or for short-term profits, you can't have long-term chaos for short-term profit because the chaos outruns. And if you can't control, and it seems Trump can't control the chaos, he starts it all right, but chaos is chaotic. And unless you're controlling every single aspect of it, including the unpredictable things that you don't know what are coming, you've suddenly lost control. Vladimir Putin is much better at this, although he seems to have overstretched himself with Ukraine. Most leaders, of course, spend their time trying to put out the fires, not have it chaotic, have it a level of predictability. And most leaders fail at it too, because as Macmillan said, the British Prime Minister, when asked what is being Prime Minister about, he said, events, dear boy, events. And so to lean into the chaos doesn't help. And that's what Trump does. Whether it's because that's always been his thing, and in business, his whole thing was to create chaos so that the other side would find it very difficult to pay and to sue. But Pam Bondi gets the sack not because she was bad, though she was, but he wanted her to act like Michael Cohen, the lawyer who'd go in and threaten to sue everyone and tell everybody to sit down and shut up. This is how it's going down. The Attorney General doesn't do that and can't do that. And so she was, one, not terribly qualified, but more importantly, from Trump's point of view, ineffective. But she couldn't be effective in the way he wanted her to be, because that's not the role. And a better Attorney General probably would have been sacked earlier. But she tried to be the role and found herself legislatively constrained by being able to be that standover person. There is a great story of Trump hiring some contractors to do something, and then turns out that they were mafia. And they said, we've come for our payment. He said, I'm not paying you, you can sue me. And they said, we don't do court. So he paid them. It fails the biographer's test in that it's funny, but it does ring a bit true too. So
Yeah, but it's also that thing that how much chaos is too much chaos. And any chaos is not good for a government. And even if that is your style of government that you create, you govern through the creation of chaos. But if that chaos is uncontrollable, as you referred to before, that ends up being a problem. You've got to be able to manage all of these things, and so far it's unmanageable.
Yeah. For a guy he doesn't understand chaos. I don't think he understands very much, actually. I think he understands how business works, but retrospectively. This is a guy who used bankruptcy in a casino and tried to spin it as an advantage. As Montgomery Burns in The Simpsons said, it's a great business plan. Idiots come in, leave their money and go home. And yeah, it damaged his reputation. His appalling management of properties in New York, for all his talk of being a New York property magnate, he only owns about 6 or 7 buildings in New York. The big ones own hundreds and even thousands. He's not allowed to buy in New York. If they get the sniff that he's trying to buy something, they buy it out from under him.
Well, he's been shunned in the New York property market. He should have been shunned in more places than just the New York property market. But in the meantime, the rest of the world just has to put up with the chaos that he's creating. And my feeling is that it's just going to take a long, long time for the world, including the United States, to recover from all of this chaos. It's going to take a very, very long time.
We live in strange times.
That's it for this episode of New Politics. Thanks for listening in. And if you value independent journalism without the influence of corporate backing, join New Politics at newpolitics.com.au and support us directly. It's just $5 per month, and we always try to keep it very simple. If you like what we do, please send some support our way. It keeps our commitment to independent journalism ticking along. I'm Eddie Djokovic. Thanks for listening in, and it's goodbye to our listeners.
I'm David Lewis. We'll see you next time.